let g of t equal the square root of t, and let r of t be the vector valued function, t squared, secant t, tangent t, and we would like to find the derivative of the composition, r of g of t. So the ordinary chain rule for composition, the derivative of f of g of x is f prime of g of x times g prime of x. And the formula for the derivative of a composition of a real valued function with a vector valued function is similar. The derivative with respect to t of r of g of t, the formula here, is r prime of g of t times g prime of t. This one's a vector valued function and this one's a scalar function, and so we usually like to write the scalar before the vector. So g prime of t times r prime of g of t. So let's apply this formula in this situation where r is this vector here and g is the square root of t. So the derivative of r of g of t, we need r prime of t first. R prime of t is 2t secant t tangent of t. We just take the derivative of each component, and then secant squared t. So that's r prime of t. We need r prime of g of t. So r prime of g of t is r prime of the square root of t. So we have to put the square root of t in for t here. So that's 2 square root of t secant of square root of t tangent of square root of t secant squared of square root of t, and then finally we have to multiply that by g prime, and the derivative of the square root of x is 1 over 2 times the square root of x from the power rule, because the square root of x is x to the 1/2, and so its derivative is 1/2 x to the minus 1/2, which can be written as 1 over 2 times the square root of x. So the derivative of r of g of t, which is r prime of g of t, which we have here, times g prime of t. So it's 1 over 2 times the square root of t times the vector that we have here, 2 square root of t secant of square root of t times tangent of square root of t and secant squared of square root of t. And we can distribute this scalar to each component, and if we did that, we would get 1 in the first component, which is very nice. But in the other two components, we would just get the trig functions divided by 2 root t. So those aren't so nice. And there is our application of the chain rule, where we have a vector valued function with a real valued function inside.